Surveys and evolution. That's what I call it. So one of the things that happened during my particular case with the FTC that I found very intriguing was how much they responded to the idea of surveys. First of all, how badly they wanted any surveys that we had done with our customers. And then something very interesting happened, which is going to trigger this conversation today. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I've actually never had a lengthy conversation with Greg about this very topic. We've had little bits and pieces. I could probably predict what he's going to say, but I think something that we're going to talk about today, every single one of you can put into your marketing right now. It's not going to stop you from being sued, but I can tell you from personal experience, it could help a lot if God forbid you did get sued. Plus, it's just good business practice. It's going to help you make a better product, a better company. So here's a backstory. When I first got this FedEx letter, right, as part of the many things that I had to turn over to them, one of the things they asked for was, give us any surveys you've done with your audience and customers, any form of survey. Now, we didn't have any. So great, we don't have any, so we don't have to turn them over. However, and they never asked more about it. They did ask a couple of times, are you sure? Are you sure? But that was it. Now, fast forward about a year later, we're finishing up the discovery. We've given whatever we have. I've signed an affidavit that says, look, to my best knowledge, I've given you everything. I'm in their offices. They allow us to do a presentation. I've put together a 45-minute webinar deck. I realize the irony of that. And each slide has one point about my business that I want them to know. We go through the whole thing, okay? I worked really hard on this, and I was hoping that they'd have a lot more questions because the deck made a really good case for why we weren't an evil company. So when we finished the whole deck, the two attorneys sitting opposite of us kind of looked, nodded their head, and we said, any questions? And they said, no. That's not really the answer I wanted to hear. And then all of a sudden, the main attorney goes, wait, I do have one. And I'm like, sweet, let's go. Let's have a conversation about this. And he stops and says, you mentioned surveys on your slides. So do you have surveys? Because we don't see that you've turned over any surveys. And I remember being so disappointed, being like, really? That's your question for the whole presentation. So the clear up was that one of the slides, we showed them how we were just getting ready to launch an entire survey sequence and things. And they heard the word, and it was like, we want them. I remember leaving going, that's interesting. Because the only question they ever asked about my whole presentation. And I thought, well, they really want surveys. So with that, we bring in today our one and only compliance attorney, Greg, right before Thanksgiving. So we're filming this right before, the week of. And he's been, I feel like anything related to the FTC right now is fresh because he's been in constant conversations with them lately. Greg, talk about surveys. And we've had one conversation where you told me, hey, it's not just doing the surveys, but then it's showing that you did something with the results and and then documenting and tracking all of that it can help. This is a practice that I think everyone watching could put into play starting today. Can you help guide that? Like, how should it work for a business, not under investigation, just normal business right now? What would you advise them?
One of the things I always talk about is just keeping your pulse on the client experience, because the better you understand what your client's experience is, the better you'll know whether you're meeting their expectations. So I've said this a lot in the trainings and these podcasts that we've done before, but the biggest issue that I think the marketers have is that their marketing materials have a gap between what the actual deliverable is. And so the expectation is wrong because the marketing materials will be like, fast, easy way to make money. And then the training is, let me show you how to enter into this business. So we're going to train you, but there's no guarantee as making money or how fast or quick you're going to make it. So there's a gap. So when I always talk to clients about marketing practices, what I say is, if the gap between the marketing and the expectation is small, then you're good. Now, what a lot of clients will do, or a lot of companies will do, is that they won't gauge what that is. So they get in their own perception that, hey, I think the gap's really small. Well, how do they know? They're not talking to their clients at all. They're not FaceTiming when they're trying to figure out what they are. The customer support may get some calls in there, but they're not really engaging with them to know what the actual experience is. Because how many people really do get vocal over what their experience is? Not a lot. So in order to find out and keep your pulse on what the client's doing, my recommendation has always been to do surveys periodically throughout the process to check in with the client to see how the experience is. So you can identify quicker if there's a disconnect or there's a bigger gap than you thought there was originally in between your marketing and fulfillment. It also allows you to determine before they go file a complaint with the AG's office, the Better Business Bureau, or with the FTC, that there is a disconnect. You can identify that sooner. And so these surveys do a lot of things. And I actually recommend a lot of clients to do it because a lot of clients want to find out what the typical experience is. And they want to say, hey, Greg, I've got all these really good consumers that are doing these, clients are making money with this, or they're seeing these type of results. I want to share them. And then I say, well, is that typical? And they're like, I have no idea, but I've got a handful of people that say it. Well, the resolution for that is the solution, embed survey throughout the process. If you tell the clients up front, hey, we have a check-in process that as you engage with us through this training mechanism, that as we go through these courses, we keep you accountable and we have you check in at different points. And when you check in, that feedback is invaluable for us to be able to provide the additional service for you. So you build into the model already that they understand that they're going to check in with you about where they're at, whether it's journaling or it's some sort of progression sheet or they're checking in through the progress. And what does that do? It allows a couple things. One, you can see if their expectations are being met and the service is good. Two, you can ask specific questions about their typical journey. So at the end of the day, you got all this data, and then you come back and say, hey, listen, we can show that our typical student has this type of experience because of how many touch points we have with them. We have so much data that we can come and do it. And it's way easier to collect that data through the process than to wait until after the client's journey is over and then go back to the customer and say, hey, tell us about this. So surveys and customer data is essential to your businesses, like essential. That's why in the Lauren case, why did the FTC ask? They wanted to see what they were doing due diligence wise to talk about. So when Anik sees it, it's like, well, we didn't do it. We don't have to produce that. Well, okay, good for him not having to produce, but from the FTC's perspective, it's like they're not checking in with their customers. So they don't know what the typical results are. They don't know if there's a disconnect. So it was a bad deal for them, even though it didn't bite him terribly in the butt at the end of the day. But it would have been a great defense had they had that. But he didn't know because he didn't have counsel to tell him to do that. Or if he had me, maybe he would have.
Yes.
Maybe.
I never even, well, I understood the concept of like doing an NPS score, net promoter score and all that. And we did have that. So we had a net promoter score from within our platform, but that's not that, albeit very good business tool to use to get a general feel for your audience, which we had a pretty good net promoter score. So we presented that to them and they were just like, I don't care, because that's not what they're looking for, right? They're looking for substantial feedback. From a business perspective, it makes sense at this point. I mean, it's not easy to do, by the way, as a business owner to send out that survey. You're going to take some bullets back. And I think probably subconsciously there's a reason why maybe we've never done them because, typically the people that are very happy may or may not fill it out, or they'll give you the numerical answers, maybe won't fill out the comment part, but the ones who aren't are going to be vocal. The way we do it now, though, inside of Complyly and NAOAC, I'll give a prime example. NAOAC, we got a lot of uprising, loud feedback, and by that I mean like 9 people in the group that were like, hey, we don't like the way the digital book is delivered. Can you give it to us in an easier file? The problem with giving it to them in an easier file is that becomes very spreadable. So people are going to share it with each other. I know that. So I had been holding that back, but we keep getting this feedback. And so finally I told Olga, I said, you know what? It's not worth it. Let's make a digital file that's easy for them. Even if they share it, whatever. I want this complaint to be gone. One by one, I want to create an amazing experience for these customers. But the digital file, let's do this. Let's put some promos in there. Let's link to our webinar. Let's link to Complyly. Let's link to stuff. So even if it is being spread out, it becomes like a flyer for us, right? So it's promoting our other properties. So, that was based off of feedback. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. But at the end, you got to make the customer happy. And here's the other thing. A couple people said, hey, when I bought your book, I believed when I was getting the digital version that it wasn't a web experience, that it was a digital file I could get. And I thought, all right, fair enough, right? There's a difference between what they're getting and what they're believing they're getting. I teach this net impression. We got to match it. So either I change the copy or I change that deliverable. I chose to change the deliverable. But coming back to this, I think it's very important you not just do the survey. So if everyone's watching this like, oh, I'm going to send a survey now. Hold on, pause, time out. Got to be strategic about it. Are you equipped and prepared to then act upon the feedback you get? because it could be pretty big. And what could be worse is for you to do surveys and then to have absolutely no documented changes made or execution made. So the first question is, Greg, would you advise people to do these surveys through a legal firm? So like, would they do it through Guardian Law? Is there any kind of added protection or benefit of doing that?
I don't know if you get attorney-client privilege. I think the results you would do through a law firm. You take the raw data and you'd run that through a law firm, so that whatever the results were would be attorney-client privilege. But I don't know how you could try to do it independent. Problem is
But if the raw data sits on their server before, then they have ownership over it. It's definitely not privileged. Like that raw data could then be discovered
yeah.
by.
The question would be is if you think the results are going to be terrible, then that's the risk, right? If you think that everybody's going to be upset and that the people are going to say that there's a disconnect between the advertising and the fulfillment, that would be a risk. You can hire a law firm to do that, and then they can step in and do they can do an independent results. It just depends on whether or not the client would be willing to give direct feedback to a law firm instead of the company itself, especially if you embed it within your process. So
Okay.
you'd have to tell them that we're going to do this, and then they would be like, "Why through an attorney?" I just think that while I agree with you that that would give you attorney-client privilege and some sort of protection for that, um, I just don't know if the customer would be like, "That doesn't fit right,
Feels
right?"
weird. Yeah. Yeah,
Feels
it
weird.
feels weird.
I don't know many of my clients that have it. I mean, I don't do a lot of the surveys for my clients.
Okay.
So again, document retention policy, only keep your surveys for 30 days. If, you can have that survey, and then maybe if you have good results, you can have those. It just depends on what you're getting the survey data for. If you're trying to do it
Okay.
for locality, keep on to that for a long time. If
Okay.
it's more of like customer journey experience, you only have to keep it for 30 days. So
Okay. So there you go, everyone. That's a really good answer. Make sure you have well, first of all, for if you're watching this and you're like, what's a document retention policy? You got to go back to this episode and watch the stuff that we've done on that. And you got to join us inside a Compliant Marketing Academy. And you can do that at compliantacademy.com/go. The URL is in the description below. By the way, very likely 2025 is going to bring a price increase to the Compliant Academy. So I would join now if I was you, so you don't get impacted by that. And that's not false scarcity, because we wouldn't do that on here. You know that. But we give you a sample template document retention policy. I still think you should hire Greg's firm to kind of personalize it, but that's up to you. But one of the terms you could have on your document retention policy is that, hey, any surveys and data we collect, we destroy after 30 days for privacy protection of our people that gave it to us. So if you're expecting, here's what I would say, Greg. If you're scared because you feel like you're going to get horrendous results back, maybe you don't even need to do a survey right now. You have a deeper problem that you're already aware of. Cut it out. Stop. Fix that. You should not be expecting that. My fear of surveys was never that, oh my God, I'm going to get like this ridiculous. My fear was always like people will be unreasonable with what they want and demand and say. And then it just would irritate me. And, it's just one of those things where I was like, okay, grow up. And now I'm doing it, by the way. Now we're very proactively seeking advice and feedback from members of our products. And I gotta be honest with you, like it's the exact opposite. I love it because they just tell you what they want and you just make changes. Like you don't have to think anymore. You don't have to be creative. And I've found for every one person that tells you what the issue is, there's at least like 20 that are thinking it, but they're not vocalizing it, which by the way is also the belief pattern of the FTC. They believe that as well. So do the surveys, take the feedback and damn seriously, document the process of you now implementing changes based off of that survey. That's going to be the most important thing, right? You make the changes, but if you don't document it, there's no way to be able to show that, hey, we did it, this is what we found, then we improved it, and then we did the survey again and found that improvement had made a benefit. Greg, how frequently should these happen? Quarterly, annually, semi-annually?
frequent as non-frequent as you have. It just depends on the process, right? If you had a 90-day program, you probably want to check in 2 times before the end of the program. So it could be every
Okay.
30 days. If you have a 6 months or an annual program, it may be 90 days check in, I mean, it just depends on the length of the program you're offering.
Got it. Got it. Greg, have you seen a situation, or can you think of a particular case in which you, as a attorney to a company, did turn over a bunch of survey data and that it actually helped, and that Was there a situation you can think of without obviously naming the client?
Well, I mean, I wasn't counsel on the case, but I saw in the response case that they had a lot of survey information. That was going to go to trial. I think that that survey information was going to be very helpful because the average consumer at various points said that they had like 4.8 out of 5, right? And so
Mm,
they were trying to say they were being deceived and that there were a lot of complaints. That would have been an issue at trial for sure. Didn't they
got it.
said before trial, so I don't know how it actually would have came down, but the fact that they had that data was very helpful because if they had gone to trial, it showed a pattern of clients who were happy. Because when you have 100 people that file BBB complaints, you think, well, that's a lot. But when you're seeing 10,000 people a year, that's minuscule. And if you've got 10,000 people who have said rated it 5 stars out of 5, and you've got all the surveys for that, that's pretty compelling. You've got to
Yeah.
counterbalance the negative because what happens when they file these lawsuits is they focus, as you know, only on the negative. They don't focus on the positive. The people are happy with the service. They want to make it seem like everybody's unhappy. So if you've got data to show that a lot of people are happy, then it's much better.
Got it. All right. Perfect. Thank you for that. All right. So let's move into something new that we're going to start doing at the end of these episodes, everybody. We're going to move into and do some rapid fire questions. I'm going to try to do 3 or 4 rapid fires every episode. I don't know how this is going to shape up because I'm trying to do them on the topic that we talked about that day. I'll tell you why I'm trying to do this. If you want a little marketing lesson, I'm trying to do these rapid fires with Greg because it makes great content for shorts. It's just easier for our editing team to pull those out, and then they represent, that topic represents the podcast of the week. But before I do the rapid fire, I forgot to mention we are currently at the release of this episode in the middle of Cyber Monday sales. So right now, click the link below in the description and go check it out. We actually have a Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal going on for the compliance space. We are going to be doing a 4-hour summit entirely focused on asset protection, tax optimization, and entity creation. You do not want to miss it. It is, I think as of today, by the time you're watching this, the price has probably gone up to $8 or $9 or something. So it's very inexpensive. I've never done anything like this before. I know Greg's never done anything like this before. The price goes up every single day until the actual summit happens. So go click the link, go make it happen. All right, kicking off rapid fire
Rapid
question.
fire, off the cuff.
Rapid
I
fire.
have no
All
idea.
right, here we go.
Go.
Greg, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most important, how important is it that a business be doing surveys in their business from a compliance perspective?
8.
8. All right. How often would you like to see those surveys done? Let's say that's a client that sells a program that's not time specific, it's just a course. They just keep selling courses. How often would you like to see those?
I Every 90 days. I mean,
Every 90 days,
yeah,
quarterly.
there's no
Okay,
explanation every 90 days.
got it. Now, results come in from these surveys. How aggressively do you recommend that clients then make changes? Do you give them months, weeks, days? How fast should they be absorbing and acting?
I think within 30 days, they should be pivoting to based on the results they get.
Got it.
Maybe longer because maybe the results are a lot of reshooting of the back end data. But I would say you immediately take those results and you take action on them.
All right, next question, rapid fire. How do you document these changes that you're making? What's the best way to document it, save it so that you could turn it over if ever asked?
Well, summarizing the data, and I mean, a lot of clients do it in a whole bunch of different ways. They take the data and they may internalize it, make changes, and then they retest it to see if that concern has gone away. And if the concern's gone away, then you have 2 reports, right? We had a report in June that said people are upset about X, Y, and Z. Report July after we had implemented the changes, no concern. So you could show the differences between the 2 reports, like an improvement for that. It'd be like an improvement cycle. So we went from a customer satisfaction rating of 80% to 90% in 30 days based upon this one change. You document that, you keep that in your back pocket.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. All right. Final question for this rapid fire. You get 3 questions that you can ask a customer on a survey. Greg, what are the 3 questions?
Would you recommend the service to somebody else? That's a good
Okay.
indicator if they like the service. Um, yes or no. I mean, I think you ask if whether or not, what did they like about the service that they received, right? What did they not like about the service they received? Those are the 3. If you're just
Okay.
limiting 3 questions, those are the ones I'd want to know.
Awesome. All right. And with that said, Greg, you survived our first ever official rapid fire. I know we did an unofficial one last week, and I'll get better at these too. All right, everybody, there you go. Click the links below. Give us some money. Support the cause. I'd like to correct some thoughts out there. People are like, oh, Greg and Anik are making millions in compliance. We are not. We'd like to. We are not. So please support the cause. Buy the book. Buy the academy, get into complyly.com, tell others about it, spread the message, and let's go compliant, all right? I'm telling you right now, I'm loving it. I love compliant marketing. I'm not even making this up. It makes you into a better marketer, it makes you into a better business, and it gets you better customers. So embrace it. Have an absolutely amazing holiday week. I know we're coming into major holiday season. Be inside the Facebook group. I'm going to post pictures of me basically pretending to be Buddy the Elf. My entire house is going to be lit up. Good luck to all my neighbors. As a matter of fact, I hired a team this time to do it. So they're working right now while I'm filming this episode. So it's going to be a little ridiculous. I'll post pictures, but it'll be in the group. You have to buy the book to be in the group. With that said, Greg, as always, thank you very much. And to the rest of you all, happy holidays. We'll see you next week. Bye.